A modest woman was strolling down the street when she suddenly saw her son wrongly accused of a crime. In a moment of sheer desperation, she rushed toward the officers, and her actions left everyone stunned. Emma, a 45-year-old mother who lived simply, was on her way home from the market when she noticed a crowd gathered in front of a pharmacy. Curious, she approached, her heart pounding with every step. When she saw her son, Anthony, standing in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by police, her pulse quickened. The 23-year-old was handcuffed, his face twisted in panic. Emma's feet moved instinctively, her maternal instinct guiding her every action. "What's going on? My son didn't do anything," she cried out, certain that Anthony was incapable of committing any crime. The police ignored her, continuing to force Anthony toward the squad car. The crowd murmured in hushed tones, some gazing at Emma with sympathy, while others speculated about Anthony's possible involvement in something illegal. The air was thick with tension, and time seemed to stretch, every second hanging heavily in the atmosphere. Emma tried to push her way through the officers to reach her son, but they held her back. "Please, he's not a criminal. He's a good boy," she pleaded, tears beginning to spill down her weathered face. Anthony looked up at her, his eyes wide with desperation. "Mom, I swear I didn't do anything. This is a huge mistake." His voice cracked with anguish and fear. Emma could see the hopelessness in his expression and knew she had to act. She had to protect him, no matter what. With her heart racing, she turned to the officers, speaking with an unexpected steadiness despite the fear coursing through her. "I did it. It was me," she said, her voice firm. The officers exchanged puzzled glances. One of them stepped forward, looking at Emma with confusion. "Ma'am, please step aside." The pharmacy attendant said the medication was stolen. "It has to be him," the officer said, nodding toward Anthony's plain clothes. Emma could see the judgment in their eyes, the way they assumed guilt based on his appearance. But she knew that wasn't important right now. Her only focus was getting her son out of this mess. Still, a sinking feeling settled in her stomach as she realized that lying would do no good. The truth needed to come out, no matter the cost. Her survival instinct took a backseat to a stronger force, her maternal love. She had to take a risk, one she'd been avoiding for years. "I swear it wasn't my son. He didn't do this. I'm the one you're looking for. I'm guilty, not him," Emma said, her voice trembling but resolute. The officers stopped, exchanging looks of surprise. "Years ago, I robbed a jewelry store in the city. The crime was never solved. This time, I was careless and didn't fear getting caught. But I swear, Anthony didn't steal the medication," she confessed, feeling a strange mixture of dread and relief. The truth was out. Her heart felt lighter as she said, "Now take me. Leave my son alone. He shouldn't pay for something he didn't do." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air as she finally let go of the secret she'd carried for so long. The officers hesitated, but eventually, they started to remove Anthony's handcuffs, replacing them with ones for Emma. Anthony's face contorted with disbelief and terror. "Mom, no, you didn't do anything. You can't do this," he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. But Emma simply shook her head. "I can't lose you, Anthony. You're all I have," she whispered, her voice breaking. As the officers led her to the squad car, she turned one last time to her son. The crowd, now silent, watched in stunned disbelief. Some murmured about her confession, recalling the jewelry store robbery that had made headlines years ago, a crime that had never been solved. Emma was pushed into the back of the police car, her heart shattering as she looked out the window at Anthony, still standing amidst the crowd, completely disoriented. "Take care of yourself," she thought silently, wishing he could hear her unspoken words as the car began to pull away. Anthony, in a state of shock, ran after the vehicle, pounding on the window. "I'll get you out of here, Mom. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to prove your innocence," he shouted, his voice full of pain and resolve. Inside the car, Emma felt a knot tighten in her throat, her emotions overwhelming her. How did this happen? How could they accuse my son? Tears flowed freely down her face as the gravity of her decision began to sink in. The confession had been instantaneous, a reaction fueled by her love for Anthony. Yet now, with the reality of her choice settling in, she began to feel the full weight of it. No matter what happens, I have to protect him, she thought, trying to calm her racing heart. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to carry on. I can do this. I have to do this, she repeated to herself, clenching her hands to stop them from trembling. The voices of the officers were distant, almost inaudible, as she focused on one thing: her son's safety. I did what I had to do, she told herself, hoping that one day Anthony would understand the sacrifice she'd made. Back outside, Anthony stood frozen, watching the car drive away, feeling waves of despair crashing over him. But he couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. I have to think. I have to find a way to get Mom out of this, he told himself, his resolve hardening. He looked around at the onlookers, their eyes filled with judgment. They think she's guilty. I have to prove them wrong, he thought, clenching his fists in determination. With his heart pounding, Anthony ran home, searching frantically for anything that could help clear his mother's name. I won't let her pay for something she didn't do, he whispered under his breath, rifling through drawers and cabinets. But then, just as he was about to give up, a sudden pain shot through him. He had to steady himself against the table to keep from falling. What's happening? This can't be happening now, he thought, panic rising in his chest. His father's illness came rushing back to his mind, and the thought paralyzed him. No, I can't be sick. Not now. My mother needs me. Fighting the growing fear, he knew what he had to do. I have to see a doctor, but I can't waste time. Mom needs me now, he resolved, ignoring the pain as best he could. But the weakness in his body made everything blur before his eyes. He grabbed his phone, dialing the family doctor as quickly as he could. When the doctor arrived and examined him, the news was grim. Anthony, your symptoms are troubling. We need to run more tests. Given your father's medical history, this could be something serious, the doctor said, scribbling something in his chart. Anthony's world seemed to crumble beneath him. I can't afford to be sick now. My mother needs me, Anthony thought to himself, fighting to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. The doctor, sensing his distress, spoke softly but firmly. I understand this is hard, but you have to take care of your health too. If you don't, you won't be able to help her. His voice was calm as he handed Anthony a list of medications to take until further test results came in. With his mind heavy with worry, Anthony left the doctor's office and headed straight for the police station. I have to prove my mother's innocence. I can't stop now, he promised himself, the determination in his heart reigniting. At the station, he introduced himself to the officers, trying to stay composed despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. I'm Anthony, Emma's son. I need to speak with the officer handling my mom's case. It's urgent, he said, his voice steady but his nerves on edge. The officer led him to Nathan, the investigator in charge. Nathan looked at him carefully, his expression unreadable. Your mother's case is complicated, Anthony, he said. But if you have any evidence that might help, I'm willing to listen. The officer's tone was serious but open, and Anthony felt a flicker of hope. Taking a deep breath, Anthony told Nathan everything he knew, though it wasn't much. My mom is innocent. She only confessed to protect me. I didn't commit the crime, but the pharmacy attendants pointed at me. When Mom saw me being arrested, she took the blame. I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. His voice trembled as he spoke, filled with raw emotion. Nathan paused, his face thoughtful. I understand your situation, but we need concrete evidence to open up a new investigation. Your mother confessed to an old robbery that was never solved and gave us some details about it, he said, taking notes. According to her, the robbery was planned by a man named Levi Alvarez. That could be a lead to finding the real criminal. Anthony left the station with a mixture of hope and frustration swirling in his chest. I have to find a way to prove Mom's innocence, he thought, clinging to the slim thread of possibility that Nathan's words had sparked. The following day, as scheduled, Anthony returned to the doctor's office. The tension in the air was thick as the doctor entered, his face grim. Anthony immediately sensed something was wrong. Anthony, The preliminary tests are showing something concerning, the doctor said, his tone serious. We need to do more tests to confirm, but I'm afraid you might have the same disease your father had. The words hit Anthony like a punch to the gut. No, I can't be sick now, he thought, his mind racing. Doctor, I need these symptoms to stop. My mom's in jail for something she didn't do. I can't afford to be sick now. I have to be strong for her. She's depending on me, he said, the words coming out almost in a whisper, his chest tight. The doctor gave him a sympathetic look. This disease is severe, Anthony. You can't ignore it. The treatment is effective but expensive. If the tests confirm it, you'll need to start right away. His voice was kind but firm, and Anthony knew the road ahead would be difficult, both financially and physically. The cost of the treatment was far more than he could afford, and for a moment, he wondered how his father had managed to pay for the same treatment all those years. How will I get the money for this? And how can I prove Mom's innocence? He thought, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. Then his mind flashed back to Nathan's words about Levi Alvarez. This is it. If I find Levi, I can get the evidence I need to set Mom free, he thought, his resolve hardening. But then, a new wave of concern hit him. What about my health? I can't afford to be sick, but I can't stop now. I'll just have to push through it. I'll do whatever it takes for Mom. He had a sudden recollection of his mother's old habit. She kept a diary, a place where she recorded everything, her thoughts, actions, and the details of the people she knew. She had never liked technology and preferred pen and paper. With that in mind, Anthony hurried to her room, hoping the diary might contain something that could lead him to Levi. As he searched through the drawers, the pain in his chest intensified, but he pushed it aside. I can't stop now. My mother needs me, he whispered to himself, moving mechanically despite the growing ache. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Anthony found the diary. Though he hated the idea of invading her privacy, he knew it was necessary to save her. This might be the chance I've been waiting for, he thought, flipping through the pages. At first, he found nothing of importance. But then, at the bottom of a torn page, something caught his eye. His pulse quickened. Eagerly, he read the handwritten words, absorbing every detail. The text revealed that Levi Alvarez had been last seen in a remote neighborhood in the city. He's living under a fake name, the note read. Here's the information I found about his new location. It continued as Emma had written it. Anthony's heart raced with adrenaline. He immediately checked the address. This is it. I got a lead, he thought. On the next page, Anthony found an old photo of his mother standing next to a man. On the back, the name Levi Alvarez was written, along with the date the photo was taken. I'm going after him. I can't waste time, Anthony decided, his resolve as firm as steel. He gathered the information and set out to track Levi down. Following the details from the diary, Anthony arrived at the remote neighborhood where Levi supposedly lived. The house was a simple blue one, no different from the others lining the street. He paused for a moment, gathering his strength, then knocked on the door. Levi, are you there? Anthony called, his voice hoarse and filled with anxiety. But there was no response. The silence was deafening. Anthony stood still for a moment, trying to make sense of it. No one seemed to be home. With a deep sigh, he decided to wait in his car until Levi returned. As the hours ticked by, Anthony's health continued to deteriorate. He took the prescribed medication, but it did little to ease the pain that gnawed at him. The weakness was overwhelming, but he refused to give up. I can't stop now. I'm so close, he told himself, his determination unwavering despite the growing pain. After several long hours, Anthony finally saw a figure walking down the street, heading toward the blue house. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the man. It was Levi. Though older, it was undoubtedly him, the same man from the photo. With great effort, Anthony pulled himself out of the car and staggered toward Levi. I have to confront him now, he thought, his voice weak but filled with urgency. Wait, I need to talk to you, he called, his voice hoarse and desperate. Levi stopped in his tracks, narrowing his eyes at Anthony, clearly suspicious. Who are you? What do you want? Levi's voice was wary, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. My name is Anthony. I'm Emma's son. My mother is paying for a crime you helped commit. I need your help. Anthony said, struggling to breathe as the pain in his chest intensified. Levi hesitated, his eyes flickering with something Anthony couldn't quite place. Fear, guilt, maybe both. I don't know what you're talking about, Levi replied, but Anthony could see the lie in his eyes. The hesitation in his words only confirmed that he was hiding something. Anthony's heart raced as he realized this might be his only chance to get the truth. My mother's in prison. I was about to be arrested unjustly for a pharmacy robbery, but when my mother saw what happened, she confessed to the crime. But they didn't believe her, so she confessed to something else, something that happened years ago. She said you were involved in that first crime. I need answers, Levi, Anthony continued, his voice trembling. I can't leave her in jail. Levi studied him, his face unreadable. She was always a strong woman. Emma will manage, I'm sure, Levi said, but there was a slight falter in his voice, a subtle regret that didn't go unnoticed. Please, Anthony begged, his desperation rising. You have to help me. My mother can't pay for this alone. Levi sighed heavily, his eyes drifting away, as though weighing his options. I don't know what you're talking about, but if what your mother said were true, if I were you, I wouldn't get involved in this. There are very dangerous people involved, and your mother could be in danger. He looked back at Anthony with a tense expression. Hypothetically speaking, if I were the man your mother mentioned, I would be deeply remorseful. But as I said, I don't remember anything about what you're talking about. The warning was clear. Levi was trying to protect him, but it also confirmed something that Anthony already suspected. Levi regretted his involvement in the crime. There were dangerous people after him, likely to reclaim the money from the robbery. You need to go now, boy. You can't stay here, Levi added, looking over Anthony's shoulder as if seeing something, or someone, that made him nervous. They might see you. Hurry. Anthony left Levi's house, his mind racing. He had the map, and he had a lead on Levi's hideout. The pain in his chest was becoming unbearable, but he couldn't afford to stop now. He got into his car and, once again, began reading his mother's diary. The words were like a lifeline. Emma had been coerced by Levi into committing the robbery when they were friends. At the time, Emma had been desperate, and Levi had convinced her that the only way to save him was to go through with it. The guilt had clearly eaten away at her, and now Anthony understood why she had confessed to another crime. It was her way of protecting him. Among the entries, Anthony found an address for a hideout that Levi used to frequent with his mother while planning the robbery. That hideout might hold the key to everything, the evidence that could exonerate Emma and give Anthony a fighting chance to free her. Levi's house had been modest, and if he had kept any of the stolen money, it likely hadn't been spent or hidden well. I need to find that money, Anthony thought, feeling the urgency build. He had no idea who was after Levi, but it was clear they were dangerous. As Anthony pulled away from the street, a black car caught his attention. It started up as soon as he showed signs of leaving, and he felt an unsettling chill crawl up his spine. Someone was watching him, or worse, following him. Am I becoming paranoid? He wondered. But the black car's behavior seemed too deliberate to be coincidental. The pain in his chest grew sharper, but he forced himself to push through. He couldn't afford to let this slow him down. After I get my mother out of prison, then I can deal with my health, he told himself, trying to steady his breath. He drove out to the outskirts of the city, where the hideout was located. As he arrived, his heartbeat was a constant reminder of his fragile state. He parked the car and stepped out, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. The house in front of him looked abandoned, its walls crumbling, windows broken. If the money's here, this could be my only chance to save my mother and pay for my treatment, he thought, walking towards the door. Every creak of the house and every shadow felt like a threat, but Anthony didn't care. He couldn't stop now. Inside, the place was a ruin. Dust covered everything, and debris littered the floor. But if there was money here, he would find it. His eyes scanned the room, looking for any sign of a hidden compartment or anything that might have been overlooked in the years since Levi had last used the place. The pain in his chest made it difficult to focus, but Anthony refused to stop. He continued moving debris, checking every corner, every floorboard. And then, As if by fate, his feet struck something solid beneath the floorboards. The sound was hollow, a dull thud that made his pulse spike with hope. "It has to be here," he whispered to himself. He bent down, carefully prying up the floorboards. His hands were shaking, but he managed to pull them up and reveal a hidden compartment. Inside, there was a heavy suitcase. "Please let it still be here," Anthony thought, his hands trembling as he opened the box. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the bundles of money inside. Aged but real. This could be the money to get his mother out of prison and pay for his treatment. Just as he was about to take the suitcase, a sound from outside froze him. Someone's here. His breath quickened, his heart pounding in his chest. He quickly closed the box and tucked it under his arm. "I can't be discovered now. I have to be quick." Outside, voices echoed through the abandoned house. "Are you sure the man who visited Levi is here?" one of them asked. "Yes, I saw him go inside." "Maybe Levi finally talked," came the reply. Anthony's panic surged. He was running out of time. He slipped toward the back of the house, avoiding areas where the voices were getting closer. "I need to get out of here without being seen." His legs ached, his chest screamed with pain, but he couldn't stop. When he reached the back door, he saw his opportunity. "It's now or never," he thought, his heart racing as he made a run for it. But just as he was about to exit, he heard footsteps behind him. "He's running away!" someone shouted. The panic surged through him, but Anthony pushed himself harder, ignoring the searing pain in his chest. He sprinted across the yard and out into the street, barely managing to escape. His legs were on fire as he ran, but he couldn't stop. He had the money, and now he needed to figure out what to do next. Anthony hid in a nearby wooded area, trying to catch his breath, feeling the weight of everything on his shoulders. "They're after me, and they want the money. This is going to complicate everything," he thought, his pulse still racing. "My mother is counting on me. I can't fail now." He knew he had to find somewhere safe to hide the money, and then figure out his next move. But his body was starting to fail him. He had to keep going, no matter what. "My health can wait. My mother can't." After some time, Anthony found a cheap hotel on the outskirts of town, where he checked in under a false name. He locked the money in a hidden compartment in his room, and for a moment, he let himself breathe. "Now, I need to figure out how to get a good lawyer for my mother, and start getting the treatment I need," he thought, the weight of the responsibility heavy on him. "But first, I need to rest. I need to think clearly. I can't fail now. But what if the police trace the money?" Anthony couldn't shake the thought, feeling trapped as he weighed his limited options. Then, a noise from the hallway caught his attention. Could they have found me already? His heart raced with panic. He crept toward the door, straining to hear the sounds outside. Footsteps grew louder. "The new guest is in room 202, a man's voice announced. "It must be him," another voice replied. Immediately, Anthony recognized the voice, a man he had heard at the house when Levi had pointed it out. It was the same person who had tried to chase him. "I can't let them catch me now," he thought, his mind scrambling to stay calm. Peering through the peephole, he saw a group of men moving down the hall. "They're after me," he realized, a wave of panic washing over him as he recognized the faces of those who had been following him. "I have to get out of here," he muttered under his breath, grabbing the backpack stuffed with cash. Quietly, Anthony climbed out of the window and lowered himself into the alley behind the hotel. He ignored the pain in his body as he sprinted down the narrow passage. "I need to find somewhere safe," he thought, panic creeping in. "These men are dangerous. If they catch me, I'm done for." He moved quickly through the dark streets, an idea slowly taking shape in his mind. "I can't run much further with this pain. But there's no better place to hide than a hospital. It's unexpected. No one would think to look there." Despite the agony in his body, a sense of determination filled him as he waited in the shadows for a taxi to pass. A few minutes later, when he finally arrived at the nearest hospital, Anthony could barely stand. His body was an aching mess, exhaustion and pain closing in on him. Each step felt like a battle against the overwhelming weakness in his limbs. The effort to escape, combined with his injuries, had drained him. Inside the emergency room, a nurse immediately rushed to his side, alarmed by his condition. "I need help right now. I'm not feeling well. I've had some tests done," and the results are due in a few days, but there's a chance I might have something serious. I don't think I'll make it that long." He barely managed to get the words out before being swiftly escorted into an exam room. The medical team wasted no time, rushing to assess him as they ran tests, their concern growing with each one. Minutes later, the doctor returned, his expression grim. "Anthony, your condition is critical. We need to begin treatment immediately. We have to stabilize you, but you'll require specialized care for what you're showing symptoms of," the doctor explained. Anthony, though weak, couldn't help but feel a pull to leave. He had to go to a lawyer to help his mother, now that he had the money to do so, but his body was betraying him. Each passing minute made it harder to ignore the pain, and he knew if he didn't stay, he might never be able to help her. "I have to stay strong. I have to save my mother. She sacrificed everything for me to be free. Now it's my turn to do the same for her." With that thought, he let the doctors continue their work. As soon as the pain subsided, the doctors administered medication, and they moved Anthony to a room. But even as his body relaxed, his mind was already racing with plans. "I can't let anyone find this money. It's all I have to save my mother," he thought, scanning the room with suspicion. After a moment of deliberation, he decided to hide the suitcase in a compartment at the back of the closet, hoping no one would discover it. "There! Now I just need to come up with a plan," he whispered to himself as the weight of exhaustion began to take over. The next morning, Anthony woke up feeling a little better, but the pain was still there, gnawing at him. He knew time was running out. "Doctor, I need to leave. My mother is in danger, and I have to get to her." The doctor gave him a concerned look. "If you really must go, I'll give you more medication. But you need treatment for your condition as soon as possible. I can arrange everything to start your treatment once you're ready. But you need to promise me you'll follow through with it. You can leave, but only if you promise you'll start treatment immediately." "Please be careful," the doctor said, helping Anthony sit up. With the doctor's help, Anthony grabbed his suitcase and, though barely able to stand, managed to leave the hospital, promising to seek treatment after taking care of more pressing matters. "For me, my mother's safety comes first. My health can wait. Thank you for everything, doctor. I'll come back to finish the treatment," Anthony said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Dr. William gave him a concerned nod. "Take care of yourself, Anthony. I hope everything works out for you and your mother." After leaving the hospital, Anthony caught a taxi and headed straight to Levi's house, ready to put an end to the nightmare once and for all. When he arrived near Levi's house, Anthony parked the taxi a little further away, scanning the area carefully to make sure he wasn't being followed. Once he was sure the street was clear, he made his way to the door and rang the bell. "I need answers. I know you're lying to me, Levi, so don't even think about trying to deceive me again." When the door opened, he wasted no time. "I was a different person back then, Anthony," Levi began, his voice low and steady. "I was reckless, desperate, hungry, with no family to turn to. When I met your mother, I saw she was in the same kind of need I was. She was trying to save your father, and I needed money too. So I manipulated her into helping me, threatening her, knowing we both needed it." Levi continued, his voice tinged with regret. "We spent weeks planning the robbery, and each day your father's condition worsened. By the time it happened, your mother was willing to do anything to save him. It worked. Afterward, she used the money to pay for his treatment, and he lived many more years free from the disease. But I didn't do it for noble reasons. I just wanted to survive. I bought food, went back to work, and hid the rest of the money." Levi paused, his eyes flickering with anxiety. "But then, these men came looking for me. They've been following me ever since. They even tried to force me into revealing where I hid the money. But I'm safe for now. As long as they don't find it, I'm good. But I didn't give it up," Levi continued. "If they had killed me, they knew they'd never get what they were after, so instead they just started watching me, constantly." He paused before adding, "They won't stop until they have the money." His voice lowered, his words carrying a weight of truth. "They've been doing this for a long time." Anthony felt a sickening mix of despair and dread churn inside him. "What are we going to do to stop them?" he asked, anxiety clouding his thoughts. He knew he couldn't trust Levi. After all, he was just another criminal, no different than the men chasing him. But in that moment, Anthony had no other choice. He could see the regret in Levi's eyes, probably because the crime he'd committed had haunted him, never letting him find peace. "I found the money," Levi said, his voice softer now. "Your mother made a note of the address where we used to meet, and that's when I started looking. Now I need to get my mother out of prison." Anthony's confession hung in the air. "And I'm worried. I think I might have the same disease as my father." Levi's expression hardened. "We need to use that money to save both your mother and you." He paused, then added, "But first, we have to deal with these men. They're not going to let us out of this without a fight." Levi had a plan in mind. He suggested using part of the money to hire security and find a trustworthy lawyer for Emma's defense. "With the right protection, we can keep you and the money safe," he explained. Anthony hesitated, knowing it was risky. But at that moment, he saw no better option. "Let's do it," he said with determination. "We don't have a choice." As they continued their conversation, Levi revealed more about the robbery that had set everything in motion. "The real person behind all this, he's a powerful criminal in the city," Levi confessed. "He hired those men to track me down, and now he wants that money, by any means necessary." Anthony's stomach sank. "If that's true, we're dealing with something far more dangerous than I ever imagined." He struggled to wrap his mind around it, the gravity of the situation settling in. "We need to be even more careful," he said, looking at Levi, who was clearly more burdened than ever. Levi nodded, but then his expression turned serious. "There's only one way we can get out of this," he said, though he didn't yet reveal his plan. Before Anthony could ask further, they heard the sound of heavy footsteps and voices growing louder outside the house. "They're here," Levi muttered, his eyes wide with fear. "They must have figured out you're here." Anthony's chest tightened as panic set in. "We need to get out of here. Now." Anthony grabbed the suitcase containing the money, ready to flee. Levi nodded, and the two of them hurried out the back door, doing their best to remain silent as they moved. The night was dark, and the empty streets gave them an opportunity to escape, but also posed hidden dangers. "Where are we going?" Anthony asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We need to shake them off first," Levi replied, leading the way with a sense of urgency. They ran through the streets, hearing the distant shouts of the men chasing them. "We can't let them catch us." Anthony's heart was pounding in his chest, and though he knew his illness would limit him, he pushed himself forward, driven by the need to save his mother. Levi glanced back at Anthony, his face filled with regret. "I'm sorry for everything, Anthony," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted things to end up like this." A mix of anger and pity surged through Anthony. "Now's not the time for apologies, Levi. We need to stay alive," he snapped, focusing on their escape. They turned a corner and spotted a police station in the distance. Levi stopped suddenly, his face grim. "Anthony, listen," he said, locking eyes with him. "You need to use the money to save your mother and to save yourself. But me? I'm going to turn myself in and confess to everything I did." Anthony's jaw tightened in disbelief. "What? No, you can't do that," he protested, but Levi stood firm, his resolve unshaken. "It's the only way, Anthony," Levi insisted. "They'll follow me to the station. You'll have the time you need to get away. I've been carrying this guilt for too long. I can't let your mother suffer for something I forced her into. I need to do the right thing." Anthony stared at him, the weight of the decision settling heavily in his chest. He knew there was no changing Levi's mind. Finally, he nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "All right, but take care of yourself." Levi gave him a quick, final nod before sprinting toward the police station. Anthony slipped into a nearby alley, watching as Levi was surrounded by the men before entering the station. "He's sacrificing himself for my mother," Anthony thought, a wave of gratitude and sorrow washing over him. Levi entered the police station, turning himself in and confessing to the robbery he'd committed all those years ago with Emma. The police took him into custody without delay, and Anthony knew this would buy him enough time to escape. He kept running until he finally found a safe place to stop and gather his thoughts. "I can't stop now." Anthony knew that even if Levi's confession was believed, his mother would still be falsely accused of the pharmacy crime. "I need to keep fighting." He pushed through the pain, determined to find a solution. Remembering Levi's advice about hiring a lawyer in security, Anthony wasted no time. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. After a few conversations, he found a lawyer willing to take on the case, guaranteeing he would defend both his mother and him. One step closer to freedom, Anthony thought, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. But he knew there was still so much more to do. "My mother is in prison for a crime she didn't commit," he muttered to himself, the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. "I need to find a way to prove her innocence." The lawyer assured him it was a straightforward case. So he instructed Anthony to meet him at the pharmacy where the false accusation had taken place. Anxious and haunted by the memory of that day, Anthony made his way to the pharmacy. He remembered how sick he'd felt that day. He had gone there to buy medicine, only for the police to arrive and arrest him, the manager claiming he'd called in a robbery. His simple clothes made him an easy target. The officers didn't even bother checking the other customers. When Anthony arrived at the pharmacy, he met the lawyer, Dr. Jaden, a sharp-looking man who paid close attention to every detail. They walked through the store, and it didn't take long before one of the employees recognized Anthony. "I remember you," she said, her voice quiet as she adjusted some medication on the shelf. "You were accused of stealing here, weren't you?" She lowered her voice, glancing around. "Stay here and don't draw attention. I'll be back in a minute." As she went off to find something, Levi and Dr. Jaden continued to examine the store. Several minutes passed before the employee returned, looking worried. "I think this might help," she said in a hushed tone. "But please don't tell anyone I gave it to you. I'll lose my job." "Doctor?" Anthony's voice was filled with hope as he watched Dr. Jaden examine the flash drive that contained the crucial evidence they needed. The lawyer inserted it into his computer, and the tension in the room grew with every passing minute. They waited, their eyes fixed on the screen. Finally, the video began to play. They saw the footage of the robbery from that day, clear and undeniable. The pharmacy manager was visible, leaning over the shelves, taking medication, and hiding it in his bag. Then, he walked to the counter, called the police, and reported a robbery. "This proves that neither I nor my mother committed the theft." Anthony's voice was steady, but inside, a wave of hope surged. Dr. Jaden immediately copied the recording onto another device. "This is it," he said, his eyes shining with determination. "We'll use this to open a new case and get your mother freed." Anthony's heart pounded in his chest. They were finally getting somewhere. "We're closer than ever," he thought, feeling the weight of the fight ahead, but also the flicker of hope. As Dr. Jaden began working on the legal aspects of the case, Anthony couldn't help but think of the men still chasing him. "They're probably still out there, looking for me," he thought, his mind racing. "I need to stay safe until this is all over." But the pressure was immense. Despite the evidence and the progress with his mother's case, the danger hadn't passed. "I can't give up now." The thought pushed him forward, even as his body continued to weaken. He knew he couldn't stay in one place for long, but he needed to rest and keep out of sight. "I'll wait here," he decided, renting a small apartment in a quiet part of town. It was the safest option for now, though the wait felt endless. His thoughts often turned to his mother. "She needs me." The battle wasn't over, but he was doing everything he could. Every hour that passed felt like a small eternity, but Anthony remained determined. "I hope this evidence is enough to set her free." Then the phone call came. Dr. Jaden's voice crackled with excitement. "Anthony, we've opened a new case. The evidence you brought will exonerate your mother. She'll be released soon." Relief washed over him, flooding his chest with warmth. "Thank you, doctor." His voice cracked with emotion. "This means everything to us." Despite the good news, Anthony knew the battle wasn't over. But now, with the legal process moving forward, they were one step closer to justice. "We're almost there, Mom," he thought, hope blossoming once more in his heart. With the case progressing and the prospect of his mother's release, a new wave of guilt settled over Anthony. As the reality of his situation set in, he realized there was still something he had to do. "I need to return the money." The weight of the stolen funds felt unbearable. Anthony had never stolen in his life, and though it had been a means to an end, he knew he couldn't live with it. "I can't start a new life with dirty money," he thought. If I'm going to die, I'd rather go out with integrity. He made the decision. Later that day, Anthony called Dr. Jaden. I didn't tell you everything about my mother's case, he confessed. I found part of the stolen jewelry money, and now I want to return it to the police. I don't want anything to taint my character. The lawyer was taken aback, but he couldn't help but admire Anthony's honesty. That's very noble of you, he said, his voice warm with approval. Let's do this the right way. The next day, they went to the police station together, suitcase in hand. Anthony stood before the officer in charge and placed the suitcase on the desk. This is the money from the robbery that Levi confessed to. I found the rest of it, and I'm returning it all. I want nothing to do with it. The officer looked at him, surprised but respectful. You're doing the right thing, son, he said, accepting the suitcase. This will help a lot in your mother's case. As word of Anthony's honesty spread through the town, something unexpected happened. His illness worsened. The test results confirmed what Anthony had feared. He had the same disease his father had. Without proper treatment, his chances of survival were slim. But even in the face of his own mortality, Anthony's story began to resonate with the people around him. The community, inspired by his integrity, began to change their perception of him. He did the right thing, they said, even when he could have kept the money. People began to admire his courage and honesty, and many were moved by his mother's sacrifice. Soon, a group of residents organized a fundraising campaign to help Anthony afford his treatment. He deserves our help, one of the organizers said. Let's show him that the community cares about those who remain upright, even in the most desperate situations. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from all over, both small and large amounts, as people from different walks of life came together to support him. I'm not alone in this, Anthony thought, his heart swelling with gratitude. As the donations continued to grow, Anthony realized that he would have the funds to pay for his treatment. This is going to help me get better, he thought, his spirits lifting. With the support of the community, he began his treatment. I'm doing this for my mother and for myself, he thought, as he started the first round of medical procedures. He knew it would be a long road ahead, but the support from those around him made it easier to bear. I need to get strong again so I can keep fighting for her. Meanwhile, Dr. Jaden continued to work tirelessly on Emma's case. We'll make sure she's released as soon as possible, the lawyer promised. Anthony trusted him and knew that his mother's freedom was within reach. She will get out of this, he thought, feeling his confidence grow with each passing day of treatment. And then, the long-awaited day arrived. Emma was released from prison, and Anthony was there to greet her. We did it, he said, his voice thick with emotion as he enveloped her in a hug. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she held her son tightly. I knew you would make it, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so proud of you. I knew they were judging you too quickly. I couldn't let them accuse you, my son. I'd do it all over again for you. Anthony's heart swelled with love and relief. We'll rebuild our lives, he said with determination. Together, we can overcome anything. Emma smiled, her eyes shining with pride and hope. Yes, she said, her voice steady and full of faith. My son will move forward one step at a time. With Emma's freedom secured and Anthony beginning his treatment, things were starting to improve. Now we can start over, Anthony thought, a sense of peace settling over him that he hadn't felt in years. He knew that honesty and integrity would be the foundation on which he would rebuild his life. As the news of the family's courage and sacrifice spread through the city, something remarkable happened. Their honesty and courage are inspiring, people said, admiring the way Anthony and Emma had faced their struggles. A new movement began to take shape, one where people came together to help those in need, especially those battling illness and financial hardship. Let's expand this initiative, one of the fundraiser's organizers said, inspired by Anthony's story. Let's help others the way we helped him. And so, Anthony's journey, one filled with pain, struggle, and immense sacrifice, had not only led to his own healing, but had ignited a ripple effect of kindness and solidarity in his community. The fight wasn't over, but now, more than ever, he had hope. If we manage to help Anthony, we can help many others, one of the community leaders said passionately during a meeting. The room, filled with individuals who had been touched by Anthony's story, nodded in agreement. Inspired by his sacrifice and the collective effort to secure his and his mother's future, the community began to gather even more resources. "Let's show that solidarity can change lives," declared another group member, standing tall. Their voices echoed with a renewed sense of purpose. The community was coming together like never before. From his hospital bed, Anthony watched the movement unfold with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "It's amazing what they're doing." He could hardly believe that his story, his struggle, had inspired so many people. He had always felt alone in his fight, but now he saw how far his story had traveled, touching lives across the city. "I can't believe how much they've done for us," Anthony thought, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. His body was still weak, but his heart was full of hope. "As soon as I'm better, I want to help continue this movement," he told his mother, a hopeful smile spreading across his face. Meanwhile, the authorities were finally making progress. The men who had chased Levi for so long, the ones responsible for threatening Anthony's life, were tracked down and arrested. The weight of fear that had loomed over Anthony's head began to lift. Justice is being done, he thought, feeling a sense of peace knowing that those who had been hunting him could no longer harm anyone. Levi, despite his attempt at redemption, still had to face the consequences of his past actions. "He's paying for his crimes," Anthony reflected, but at the same time, he knew Levi had done the right thing in the end. "He sacrificed himself to give me and my mother a chance. He should be at peace with that choice." With the continued support of the community and the growing fundraising campaign, Anthony's health also began to improve. "It's working," he thought, noticing small but encouraging signs of recovery. His body, once ravaged by illness, was slowly but surely responding to treatment. "We have to restart our lives," he said to Emma, feeling a new sense of possibility. "I have so many ideas to help others, so many things I want to do to give back." Emma, ever the pillar of strength, looked at him with pride. "I will always be by your side, Anthony. Together, we'll make a difference." In the weeks that followed, Anthony grew stronger every day. His recovery wasn't quick, but it was steady, and with it came a renewed sense of purpose. "I'm feeling stronger every day," he thought, determined. "Once I'm back on my feet, I'll start looking for a job to help others who, like me, once needed help." Grateful for all the support they had received, Anthony felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. "I won't give up," he promised himself. "We'll keep fighting, and we'll keep helping others." Their story became a beacon of hope. Anthony and Emma's story inspired us all, people said, admiring their strength, honesty, and unwavering love for one another. They've shown us that despite any problem, we must stay by the side of those we love. The community, unified by their journey, continued to work towards a better future. "We are capable of anything," one report said, "especially when it's for those we love." Emma's protective, fierce love for her son had touched the hearts of so many, and now their story was a symbol of resilience and hope. Anthony and Emma became active participants in the ongoing fundraising campaign. They attended events, shared their experiences, and expressed their deep gratitude. "We want to thank everyone who helped us, and we're committed to continuing this cycle of kindness," Anthony said during one of the events, his voice filled with emotion. Emma, always by her son's side, smiled proudly. "My family is safe and happy now," she thought, overwhelmed with gratitude. "And together, we'll make a difference." As Anthony's health continued to improve, he started making plans for the future. "I want to create a foundation to help people facing severe illnesses," he told Emma one evening, the idea taking root in his heart. Emma's face lit up with pride. "That's exactly what we need," she said. "You can always count on my support, my son." With the community's backing, Anthony and Emma opened the Hope Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing treatment, financial support, and hope to people suffering from severe illnesses. "We're doing this to give back all that was given to us," Anthony said during the foundation's inauguration. The moment felt like a culmination of everything they had fought for, a chance to pay forward the kindness they had received. The foundation quickly gained momentum, drawing support from both local and international donors. Anthony and Emma's efforts had proven that a united community could overcome any challenge. "This is just the beginning," Anthony said, his voice full of hope as he looked at the crowd gathered at the opening. Emma, standing beside her son, couldn't help but smile. "We've been through so much, but we came out stronger," she said, looking at Anthony with tears in her eyes. "And now, we're ready for whatever comes next." Their journey had been long and painful, but it had forged them into people with a deep understanding of the power of love, honesty, and second chances. "We did it, Mum," Anthony said emotionally. "We overcame everything, and now we're ready to move forward." Emma embraced him tightly, her heart full of love. "Yes, my son," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "The future is ours." And so, Anthony and Emma showed everyone that, no matter the hardships, we are capable of overcoming any obstacle when we face it with integrity, courage, and the support of those around us. Their story became a testament to the power of resilience and love, a story that would inspire generations to come. "We are ready to face the future together," Anthony thought as he looked out toward the horizon, full of dreams and hope for the future.